Not a story about talent. It's not about luck. And it's definitely not about success coming easy. This is a story about losing everything. And still refusing to disappear. Stay till the end. Because this story might change the way you see your own life. He wasn't always a failure. There was a time when he had dreams that felt real, plans that felt possible, and hope that felt alive. But over time, that version of him slowly faded away. Not because he stopped trying, but because the world kept reminding him of every mistake he ever made. Eventually, that's how people remembered him. Not for his effort. Not for his potential. Only for his losses. He lived in a small, quiet apartment where the walls felt closer every day. The furniture was simple, almost temporary, as if even the room didn't expect him to stay long. His wallet stayed empty, not from laziness, but from opportunity slipping through his fingers again and again. And his phone, once full of conversations and plans, stayed silent. No messages, no missed calls, just a screen that never lit up. He applied everywhere. Jobs that promised stability. Opportunities that offered hope. Second chances he desperately needed. But rejection became familiar. Emails went unanswered. Applications disappeared into silence. Each no chipped away at his confidence until disappointment felt normal. Silence wasn't awkward anymore. It was routine. Slowly people disappeared too. Friends stopped calling, not out of cruelty, but because life moved on without him. Family stopped asking questions, not because they didn't care, but because they didn't know what to say anymore. Conversations became short. Encouragement turned into quiet concern. At night, when the noise of the world faded, his thoughts grew louder. He would lie awake, staring at the ceiling, watching shadows that didn't move, asking himself the same painful question over and over again. Was I born just to lose? Everywhere he went, he felt invisible. In crowded streets, no one noticed him. In conversations, his voice felt smaller than the room. It was as if the world had already written his story, already decided his future, without ever asking him who he wanted to become. And that was the hardest part. Not the failure itself, but feeling like he no longer mattered. One night, everything collapsed. Didn't happen all at once. It was slow, heavy, and impossible to ignore. Unpaid bills covered the table, each one a reminder of how far behind he had fallen. Deadlines passed. Warnings piled up. The numbers no longer scared him. They exhausted him. Hope felt drained, like a battery that refused to recharge no matter how long it rested. Confidence was completely gone. Not shaken. Not damaged. He stood alone in the silence of his apartment, surrounded by things that once mattered and now felt meaningless. The room was quiet, but his mind wasn't. Every thought echoed louder than the last. And in that moment, a terrifying realization hit him with absolute clarity. Nobody was coming to save him. No mentor would appear with the right advice. No miracle would suddenly change his situation overnight. No shortcut would erase the years of struggle. It was just him. For the first time in his life, quitting didn't feel weak. Felt logical. Responsible even. Stopping meant no more disappointment. No more false hope. No more waking up to another day of failure. Giving up promised relief. And that promise was tempting. He thought about walking away from everything he once believed in. About accepting the label the world had already given him. About choosing comfort over pain, silence over effort, survival over dreams. And that's when something strange happened. Instead of breaking down, he grew still. Instead of giving up, he paused. In the middle of exhaustion, fear, and doubt, he felt a quiet moment of clarity. Not loud or dramatic, but calm and undeniable. He realized something important. Quitting wouldn't save him. It would only erase the last chance he had to become something more. So he made a decision. No announcement. No motivational speech. No dramatic transformation. Just a quiet promise, spoken only to himself. Promise to show up tomorrow, even if nothing changed. Promise to try again, even when it hurt. Promise to stay when disappearing felt easier. It wasn't bravery. It wasn't confidence. It was refusal. Refusal to let this moment be the end of his story. And that silent decision, made when nobody was watching, became the most powerful turning point of his life. While the world slept, he worked. Long after the lights in the city faded and the noise disappeared, he stayed awake. Not because he was inspired but because he was committed. These were the hours no one posted about. The hours that didn't look impressive. The hours that would never make headlines. But they were his. When nobody watched, he learned. Not perfectly. Not quickly. He failed quietly, corrected himself, and tried again. Mistakes became lessons instead of proof that he wasn't good enough. Progress was slow, sometimes painfully slow, but it was real. When nobody believed, he practiced. Over and over again. On days when confidence was missing. On nights when doubt sat heavy in his chest. He practiced when quitting would have been easier, when rest felt deserved, and when motivation was completely dead. There were no likes, no applause, no encouragement. No one told him he was doing great. No one noticed how far he'd come. And for a long time that hurt. But slowly something changed. He stopped needing the noise. He stopped waiting for approval that was never coming. Discipline replaced motivation. On the hardest days, he didn't ask himself how he felt. He asked himself what needed to be done. And then he did it. Tired, uncertain, and unseen. Each small effort stacked on top of the last, building something stronger than confidence. Consistency. Weeks passed, then months. On the outside, nothing looked different. The same apartment, the same routine, the same silence. Anyone watching from a distance would have assumed he was still stuck. But inside, everything was changing. He began to trust himself again. Not because results showed up, but because he kept his word to himself. He stopped chasing validation from people who never believed in him in the first place. He stopped explaining his plans to those who only saw his past. He realized that real growth doesn't announce itself. It happens quietly, in repetition, in patience, in showing up when nobody cares. He focused on one thing only: progress. Not perfection. Not approval. Just becoming slightly better than he was yesterday. And that invisible work, done without praise, without recognition, was shaping him into someone the world would soon be forced to notice. Then one day, something happened. It wasn't flashy. It wasn't sudden. It wasn't some overnight miracle that changes the headlines. No viral moment. No instant fame. It was just a small opportunity. A quiet door opening. A chance barely noticeable to anyone but him. But this time, he was ready. Because while the world saw luck, what really happened was preparation meeting timing. Years of invisible work, late nights, endless practice, and relentless discipline had quietly built a foundation. And now, when the door finally opened, he didn't hesitate. He stepped through with steady confidence. Slowly, the people who had once ignored him, the ones who never returned his calls, the ones who looked past him as if he didn't exist, started noticing. Not all at once. Not with loud announcements or celebrations. But with curious glances and quiet questions. How did you do it? When did this happen? Why didn't you tell us? They never saw the nights. The hours spent alone, struggling with doubt. The silent battles fought in darkness. The moments when quitting felt like the only option. They never felt the fear. The fear that maybe this was all just a temporary fluke. The fear of failing again in front of everyone. The fear that the world's judgment was right all along. All they saw was the result. The success. The progress. The man who now stood with quiet confidence. No longer invisible. But success isn't magic. It's the sum of every struggle nobody witnessed. It's every moment of work done when no one was looking. It's the choice to keep going even when it felt impossible. And now, the same world that doubted him was forced to pay attention. Because he wasn't the same person they thought he was. He was stronger, more determined, unstoppable. And that small opportunity. It wasn't luck. It was the turning point. The moment when everything he'd built in silence finally met its chance to shine, he didn't win because he was special. He didn't win because the universe favored him. He didn't win because he had some extraordinary talent or gift that others lacked.
Well,
He won because he refused to quit, even when nobody cared. Even when the world looked the other way. Even when the applause was silent and the spotlight was nowhere to be found. He stayed consistent when nobody clapped. When motivation was gone, he showed up anyway. When encouragement was missing, he kept going anyway. Because he chose to believe in himself on the days when belief felt impossible. On the days when every voice inside his head told him to stop, to give up, to accept defeat. He made a choice, not just once but over and over again, to keep moving forward. Not because it was easy, not because it was guaranteed, but because he understood something that most people forget. Success isn't about moments of glory. It's about the quiet, unseen moments where no one is watching. The moments where you decide to rise even though the world expects you to fall. And that's the truth nobody talks about. Rock bottom isn't the end. It's the place where real strength is built. When everything feels lost, and there's nothing left to hold on to, that's when your true power begins. That's when resilience is forged in the fire of hardship. That's when your character becomes unbreakable. Because hitting rock bottom means you have nowhere to go but up. It means you've shed everything that was holding you back. It means you are ready to rebuild, stronger, wiser, and more determined than ever before. So if you're watching this right now and you feel like you're at your lowest point, remember this. You are not alone. You are not defeated. You are standing at the edge of something new. A chance to rewrite your story. The victory isn't in never falling. It's in rising every single time you do. And that is the kind of strength that lasts a lifetime.